Welcome to EP Presents The Making of Fallout 3. After much anticipation and a lot of hype, Fallout 3 has launched and it's completely rocked the video game industry. We had a chance to work with Bethesda on some behind-the-scenes material, and our first mission was to find out how the company got the rights to Fallout in the first place.
Now, you guys didn't originally make the first two Fallout games. How did you guys decide that you wanted to make the third one?
It was one of those things we had talked a lot about. We don't just want to keep making the Elder Scrolls, that we want to do other stuff. Our joke was we only managed to get one Elder Scrolls game out on the Xbox. So maybe this time around we could do more than one game before Microsoft makes another console. So we talked about, what do we want to do? What can we do that's different? Do we want to do our own thing? And one of the things that came up was, nobody's doing anything with Fallout. It's the kind of game we would love to make, and can we go out and get that? And so we talked to our senior management, and sure enough, they went out and got it, and we sort of took it and ran from there. So it fits well with what we think our strengths are, but at the same time, it's a very different kind of game, and so we get to sort of break from the traditional fantasy, elves and swords, and do something that's a little grittier and very different. We love this idea of this world that these guys created. The characters, the humor, the setting, the violence for its time was pretty different. And just this idea that fits well with what we do, which is, big open worlds where you can go where you want and do what you want. So using a lot of what these guys had created in coming up with the first two Fallouts, the setting and the characters, the storyline, and bringing that whole vibe into the present day, doing it in a first-person, third-person perspective, where you're right up close to the action as opposed to kind of watching it from afar. So, it's our effort to bring this really cool game that these guys have created and do something that is similar, but at the same time a bit new and different.
All right, so we understand why Bethesda wanted to make Fallout 3, but we wanted to know more about the roots of the Fallout universe, so we went right to the source and talked to members of the original team.
Hi, I'm Timothy Kane. I was the lead programmer, producer, and one of the original designers of Fallout. Well, Fallout actually started as a GURPS project. Steve Jackson Games makes a role-playing game called GURPS. I've been playing GURPS for years, since probably its first or second edition, and I was the one who had championed getting the game done as GURPS, and I had already written all of the game combat engine using their rules.
And so we sent that to Steve Jackson, and he just had moral problems with it in some ways. There's this scene in Fallout, in the initial opening movie, in which there's sort of two guys in power armor. One of them shoots someone almost like in the scene represented Vietnam, with another sort of just waving his hand to mom, which was very much just the feeling of Fallout, but Steve just felt it was too violent.
I said, well, you ain't seen nothing yet, because this is just the opening, and we're gonna do a lot worse than that. So we cut the ties, actually, at that point, because I knew that was just going to be a battle all the way, because I knew Fallout was not going to be, for the faint of heart. And on top of that, he really had a hard time getting his head around the Pip-Boy, the little character that we used to kind of explain the system. Well, what's strength? The Pip-Boy with a big muscle on his arm. And he really didn't like that either. Like he just couldn't get his head around it, and he wanted them both removed. And so we talked a lot about it, and it was like, but we didn't want to change Fallout that much. It had gotten to be something, and by taking those two things out, it just wouldn't be what we'd put together.
All of us had played a lot of computer role-playing games, and one of the things we wished we could do was something that was more, now they call it a sandbox, but we didn't have that term. We just wanted a non-linear game where we could just go out, and the whole world was made available to us right away, and we could go wherever we wanted and do whatever we wanted. The thing I just stressed was every time one of the designers made a quest, I said, I want to be able to fight my way through it, talk my way through it, or sneak my way through it. And then I sat down with the lead designer, and I sat down with him and showed him kind of how everything worked in terms of the code. And then I said, we really have to have a new set of rules, but they have to work within these constraints. And I showed him a lot of things I liked. And the only thing I remember telling him was I want luck in the game. I have a bunch of ideas of how I'd use luck. So he went away and he came back with pretty much what turned out to be special. He had all the stats and the skills and the traits. And he showed it to Brian Fargo, and Brian liked it, except there were no perks. And he said, I want something that you can buy every time you go up a level, besides skills. So Chris Taylor went away again and came back with the idea of the perks. And Fargo loved it, and everybody on the team loved it. And in about 2 weeks, we had rewritten all the rules to use.
Very true. Oh, give me your lips for just a moment. in my imagination.
Not only did it have a good setting and a good story and a good cast of characters, but most importantly, I think it reminded the genre how important it is for the world to react to the character you've built. Josh Sawyer, one of our lead designers here, like after he played through like the first time as a combat guy, he knew by the end of that game that if he had built a different character, he would get a completely different experience. So as soon as he finished the first game, like his first playthrough, he started immediately again, as a totally different character, and had a brand new game, and he was happy. I guess the other reason is like I was saying about the story and the setting, like all of those were very strong. It had its own sort of like signature about it with a 1950s feel, or at least what people in the 1950s would imagine the future would be like. And then they added Mad Max to that. Like you really can't go wrong with that combination. Fallout 1 did very, very well. Like it exceeded Interplay's expectations, which weren't very high for the title, to be honest. Like they pretty much expected Fallout to be a B product. They're like, okay, let's just get this out the door, wrap it up, you know, and they'll just move on. And then I don't think Interplay like expected the amount of critical acclaim that it got. And then once it got that critical acclaim, instead of those guys being allowed to sort of keep going with that vision and go, hey, you know, we proved that we can do this, I don't think they got that reaction internally. And suddenly, because Fallout turned out better than it did, suddenly everyone wanted to be a part of it and have their say in it, which was probably, like, that's the worst thing to do.
We've got a problem, a big one.
I left Interplay. Fallout wasn't really considered one of their big IPs. They were all, like, everything was D&D. But it's really kind of taken on a life of its own. And I had a little bit of trepidation about it, but then I met the guys from Bethesda at E3, and it was great because they let me play the game, and I got to talk with designers, and they get it. So I was put at ease that this game was actually going to be a real successor to the first two.
Stick around. After the break, we're going to meet more of the incredibly talented team that made Fallout 3. Welcome back to EP Presents The Making of Fallout 3. Before this game, Bethesda Softworks was a company almost exclusively known for their work with the Elder Scrolls series. The last game in that series was called Oblivion, and we wanted to trace the steps that the company took from Oblivion to Fallout 3.
In the year 2077, after millennia of armed conflict, the destructive nature of man could sustain itself no longer.
Now, how do you guys take the experience from Oblivion and throw it into Fallout?
I mean, the good thing about the Elder Scrolls is it's big and it's open-ended. It's about letting the player go where they want and do what they want. And those things are still important in Fallout 3, even though the setting is different and the characters and the story and all that is very different. It's still about, we want to make a game where the player gets to decide where they want to go and what they want to do. And so we can take all those learnings from Oblivion, what worked and what didn't, and figure out how to do it bigger and better in Fallout 3.
Got my eye on you. Don't do anything stupid.
Now, what do you say to the skeptics who think this is just going to be Oblivion with guns? Like, how are you going to differentiate the game from Oblivion?
Well, the first thing is it does share a lot of similarities. So it depends on what they mean by that. Do they mean it as a negative, a big negative, or are we just taking the easy road? If you look at Fallout, the things we like about it, you get to make the character you want. You don't really have a party, and you go out in this big world. That's what we like to do. That's what we try to do with the Elder Scrolls. So on the surface, you kind of take that in a world like this, and everything else is different. And the mechanics of the game, how you move around, a lot of them are similar. But when you get into combat and you do those things, it's really different. The character system is really different. So we're well aware it's not an isometric turn-based game, but the hallmarks of Fallout are there in the character system, in VATS, in the people in the world itself. And part of the impact of a role-playing game like this is putting yourself in that world and believing it. And what we can do with today's hardware and what we like to do to make these worlds come alive visually and the AI and everything else, that if you're a fan of the world of Fallout and being able to make a character that you want and go into that world, you're gonna love this game.
So we know the team at Bethesda excels at creating lots of gameplay choices for players out there, but one thing they're also renowned for is their prowess with storytelling.
The world of Fallout is what in the 50s they thought the future would be like. It's that kind of really happy Tomorrowland feel with robot butlers and these really cool cars that go 900 miles an hour and run on nuclear energy.
Our American way of life. Isn't it grand?
But there's this threat of the bombs falling, but these people thought, well, let the bombs fall, just duck and cover, go into the desk, everything will be fine. Then you blow all that up. The war happened, and then it's hundreds of years after that. So you mix that up. You get a sense of the world that was left behind, and some of the people still have those ideals. The women are still trying to make their hair nice like June Cleaver sometimes, but everything is just messed up. So it's really, really charming. The whole first, depends how you play it, but the whole first like half hour to hour of the game takes place in this underground vault. And you're born, so the game actually starts with you emerging from your mother. And the only thing you can do is press A to cry. It's the only action you can do. And the doctors look at you, and there's your father, and they ask, oh, is it a boy or a girl? And this is how you make your character. Your dad actually gives you a little baby book called You're Special. And then it describes all the stats, and you pick which ones you want to be good at, because you can't be good at everything. So you can be a strong guy, a smart guy, and then it flashes forward when you're 1 and you learn how to walk, and after you do that, it flashes forward and you're 10, your birthday party.
Happy birthday!
You get your Pip-Boy, which is the main interface for the game. Kind of like trying to step you through parts of the game. It's a mix of character generation and tutorial, but you don't even know we're doing it. And when you leave the vault, the game really gets wide open. And it's a big blasted wasteland. There's raiders out there. These are like the bandits of this world. They torture, they murder. And then mutated creatures, super mutants. And then there's various towns. So one of the interesting things in the game is you kind of discovering who's alive, how are they staying alive, and we treat all the settlements and towns differently. There's over 50 weapons. Well, you have lots of melee weapons, from pool cues to brass knuckles to baseball bats. Then you also have a lot of guns. So everything from kind of more real-world guns, and then kind of fantastical guns. We have laser rifles and plasma rifles and EMP grenades, landmines. VATS is our combat system, the Vault-Tec Assisted Targeting System, and it basically kind of bridges that gap between being something where it's just a shooter based on your own skill, like how good are you at the game and how good is your character in the world. So you can pause time and then queue up moves on people, and then you press the A button. We show you cinematically, what happened? Did you miss? Did you hit? What happens if you hit? But it's kind of nice in that you can, if you're in a role-playing, really make your character good at things that you're not personally, and then watch him or her pull that off.
Don't disappear. When we return, Fallout 3 hits the road. Welcome back to EP Presents The Making of Fallout 3. A big chunk of the responsibility of bringing a new game to market is to show it off in multiple settings. Oftentimes, the first people to try the game in a public setting are game journalists.
Fallout looks phenomenal. When you first play the game, what strikes you is the vista that they've created. A lot of games do open worlds, but Fallout, when you see just the scope of the world and the amount of detail, it just blew me away. But then, as you fight in the game and you use the VAT system, there's an RPG-like element, and the combat is very intense and very personal, and it's set against this huge backdrop. So I was really taken in by the world, and I can't wait to explore it when the game comes out.
It's a really cool new entry in the series. I kind of like the new direction they've gone, and it's a lot more contemporary, like what they were going for. Very kind of Bioshocky, but in a very unique way that's good.
There were some concerns how they'd pull it off, but I think Fallout fans especially will be thrilled that it's as accurate and respectful of the franchise as anyone could have been, with updating it for next-gen graphics and a 3D. But there's still everything that you loved about the Fallout franchise is still there, so it's very faithful.
Fallout 3 is a game with global appeal, which meant the head of Bethesda's PR and marketing, Pete Hines, logged a lot of air miles, like with this trip to Australia.
And you notice that, like,
in that one shot where I went to shoot that super mutant, he was firing a missile, and the missile was actually coming towards me while it was replaying. So time doesn't stop. When you're performing your actions, we just slow it down.
When I first saw it, I was like, this looks like Oblivion with a new skin. But things like that system was just awesome, just really clever, kind of risk versus reward balance to the game. Also, just the environment's just really, really detailed, far more detailed than the Oblivion world. You could see that from the minute you stepped into the world. Really impressed with that as well.
It's not really about how the game plays. Not like the Fallout games are all about the game world and you being in it. And yeah, you're definitely there in Fallout 3. You're definitely in it.
Trade shows, conventions, and expos play a huge role in promoting a game in today's crowded marketplace, and Bethesda was at all of them with Fallout 3, from GDC and E3 to the very popular Penny Arcade Expo in Seattle.
It was very nice of Emil to set us up in this awesome little shelter-esque kind of camper. And we're talking about Fallout 3. The game is about 99% done. How are you feeling right now?
I'm pretty awesome. Yeah, it's this is amazing. You know, it's our first time at PAX, and you know, it's exciting. You know, it's the first time the public has had their hands on the game, and that's going to start in about 70 seconds.
How's the fans been enjoying the game so far?
I mean, it's been great. You know, we had E3, and then shortly after that, we had Leipzig, where we not only had all the European press get a chance to play it, but then lots of folks from the public got to see a demo of the game for the first time publicly. So that was fun. And then obviously doing the hands-on here for the public is yet another big step for us, is sort of letting our baby go out there and everybody else check out how it looks and how it plays. So hopefully they enjoy sort of the things that we think the game does well, which is player directed, kind of go wherever you want, do whatever you want, whatever kind of character you want to play, good, bad, or neutral, sneaky or straight up combat, that however you want to play the game, it works well for you. That's what I hope that they like, but we'll have to see.
Don't disappear to the wastelands just yet. We have a lot more behind the scenes on Fallout 3 right after this. We spent a lot of time with the team at Bethesda working on an exclusive documentary on the making of Fallout 3 that's available on the Collector's Edition as well as the Survivor's Edition of the game. The Survivor's Edition also comes with its own cool Pip-Boy, by the way. There's a lot of content on that bonus disc. Here's a taste.
We wanted to have more than one thing in our pocket, that we didn't just want to do an Elder Scrolls, then an Elder Scrolls, and an Elder Scrolls. We knew we wanted to be in a similar vein in terms of, we wanted open world, we wanted, kind of role-playing elements and things like this. And we made a list of things that we might want to do. At the top of the list was Fallout.
Fallout 1 to me is like the pinnacle of the post-apocalyptic gameplay, and looking at the story and the characters in there were really inspiring.
We felt in that world and the systems they have in Fallout 1, coupled with the way we put things together, we sort of became obsessed, like, this is the game, we have to make this game. A bunch of the people who run the company knew the people at Interplay, and we pestered them, like, are you guys using Fallout? They weren't doing anything with it. Can we do something? And eventually they said yes.
It's now ours, and we have always taken the approach that Fallout 3 is being made as if we made the first two. Well, that means we do what we do, which is we reinvent, we look at what works, what didn't. We're not afraid to make changes, we're not afraid to try new things, and we're gonna try and sort of move the genre forward and move gaming forward.
Our game is set 30-some years after the events of Fallout 2, so we didn't want to step on their fiction, but the story itself is something that we came up with based on the themes of the original Fallout. It's 30 years after the events of Fallout 2, but it's 200 years after the original atomic holocaust. So in our game, things have actually gotten worse. Society hasn't progressed. Humanity is struggling to survive. There's radiation sickness, and people don't have fresh, clean water, and people are pretty well screwed. You leave the safety of your vault into this world, it's your big decision. Am I gonna help these people, or am I gonna, do my own thing and serve my own selfish needs?
We felt we needed to do something new with role-playing and guns, that we couldn't just do a pure first-person shooter thing. So how can we kind of bridge that gap between what my character can do that I've made in the game and what I, the player, can do. Something I always wrestle with.
Our game is primarily first person. So when you have guns in first person, the bar has been raised. You know, you've got Halo 3, Call of Duty 4, you get to approach that level, but it's tough because we're an RPG, not a shooter. What we definitely wanted to do with the gun stuff is not do everything that everyone else has done. So, you know, we have some weapons that you can craft and some unique weapons, you know, like the rocket launcher that shoots all the crap you find in the world. It can shoot it as projectiles. One of the things we realized is with Oblivion, most of the combat is melee combat. So everybody's, you know, charging you in up close and personal. Not so with guns. People stay back, they take cover. We've really had to compensate for that.
What we're doing technically with Fallout 3, we're drawing twice as much stuff on the screen and faster, right? So our actual ability to put things on the screen and have them look cool or be cool or do more with characters, explosions, whatever we want. It's, you know, a large factor above Oblivion. Our problem is we can't stop ourselves. Fallout's one of those examples of the game, when we started, was about half the size.
If you haven't played Fallout 3 yet, you're missing out. It's a spectacular game, and we were honored to work on this very special project. Thanks for watching EP Presents The Making of Fallout 3. We'll see you tomorrow on the Electric Playground.
At Vault-Tec, we're more than just America's first choice in vault technology. Thanks to military science, we're also your first choice in personal defense. Say hello to VATS and say goodbye to any post-nuclear nuisance.